Speaking of Eric Nicksick, it's time for topic 2. This is one of the best coaches in the sport here, a local guy here, Extreme Couture, and him and Sean Strickland. They were overseas. They went together for Strickland, his fight versus Dricus Du Plessis, and of course, we all know the result. Nicksick did an appearance on Ariel Helwani's show, and since then, there's been a little bit of drama between fighter and coach. Here's what he says. Here's part of a quote that he said. I think he needs to evaluate what he wants to do in the sport. If it's just money, then that's great. Let us know. I want to coach world champions, so my motivations are different. So I think that just to kind of show up and do that and not really back it up, to me, it was just kind of uninspiring. Strickland, of course, got wind of this, felt like he needed to address it, and he put out a statement of his own. I like Eric. He's a friend of mine. He's going to continue to be a friend of mine. Will he probably be in my corner? Probably not. We have so many great guys at Extreme. We have so many savages that can corner me. And that's the end of his quote. So, guys, let me ask you this. Was Nicksick fair to Strickland in making those comments? Let's go back to Matt Wells.
He was 100% fair to make these comments because Eric Nicksick is the head coach of Extreme Couture, a gym filled with other professional athletes who are trying to make a name for themselves, who are trying to reach gold. And when you have a guy that goes out there and literally just goes through the motions for 5 rounds, it doesn't show any urgency, you have to say something about it because you're not going to accept that level of effort in a championship opportunity, right? You finally get there. A lot of us believe that was an undeserved opportunity for the title shot for Sean Strickland in the first place. So to go out there and go through the motions was really disheartening to see. And so you got to put a message out there. Like if you're the head coach of the gym, be like, look, we're here. We get these opportunities. We really got to go for it. We're trying to bring gold home, right? So, if Sean doesn't want to compete for that at that level anymore, that's cool. Just let us know. But for everybody else, when I show up to this gym to coach, I'm trying to coach future champions. I'm trying to get these guys motivated to go out there and be the best version that they can be. If Sean Strickland just wants to show up and fight for money, that's cool. Thanks. Let us know. Please tell us that at the door so I can know, hey, this guy over here, though, he wants to be a champion. So I'm going to give him a little bit more attention when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. Ghost, how about you? What's your take?
Look, I think the comments were very, very fair. I don't think there were anything, we didn't hear anything that we weren't saying ourselves, right, when we were watching the fight. But I do think maybe they came a little too soon or better served behind closed doors. That I can agree with you. But the fighter-coach relationship is so different from pairing to pairing, right? Like Eric is extremely competitive, whether it's MMA or if we're holding Xbox controllers, he is exactly the same, right? And Sean Strickland, he just didn't seem motivated in that fight. There were just a lot of things that were off. And I can tell how somebody being very competitive, it's a representation of yourself, right? As a coach, what's going on in that cage. Now, anybody with a brain, I think, that watched that fight, especially with the UFC giving us a peek into the corners, could tell that it wasn't really so much the coach, I think, that the blame was on. It was more the fighter. I think we saw great coaching, but he just wasn't executing. And I know that probably hit Eric right in the heart, so I kind of get why he did that. But I also understand Sean Strickland and why that would have bothered him to maybe hear that out in the media. I don't know how much interaction they've had just themselves before that moment. Maybe it was best served there. And knowing Eric Nicksick for as long as we have, he seems like the type of guy that if he makes a mistake, he'll admit it, and I think these two can get past that. And the key thing that when Sean was speaking was he said he's my friend, and I think that kind of tells you that this is something that will probably get mended. It didn't maybe execute the way it should have. Sean Strickland's not the only fighter that trains at Extreme Couture. Eric Nicksick doesn't only coach one guy, right? So you have to make sure that these things get buttoned up, but I'm sure they will.
All right, Mike, what were your thoughts on all this? You're muted.
Sorry, man. It's tough because I think we all have an immense amount of respect for Eric Nicksick, right? And like he is one of the genuinely better people in the sport. So I don't think he went out there and said anything that he probably didn't already say to Sean. either immediately after the fight in the locker room or on the very long flight home from Australia. Like, I'm sure this was discussed. As Goes kind of said, maybe the timing of it wasn't perfect. Maybe if he waited another week, this wouldn't have resonated the same way. But we were in that couple day stretch of everyone in the MMA community shit on Sean Strickland for his loss, and everyone's coming out of the woodwork to take their shots at him. And maybe Sean, was rubbed even more the wrong way. It's one thing when, outsiders are coming at you. It's another thing when someone who's very close to you is coming to you. So I can understand why he was maybe hurt or bothered or felt inclined to respond. But as far as like the core of what Eric was saying, I don't think many people can disagree with that. Like, Sean didn't disagree with that. He didn't say like everything you said is wrong and how like I approach things, blah, blah, blah. He basically just said he didn't really, want him, I guess, in his corner anymore if he's going to be saying stuff like this, which is understandable. So I do think these guys will mend fences whenever Sean's next fight is going to be. Who knows? I could see Eric being back in there. He'll obviously be part of the camp and in the gym. Maybe he won't show up in the corner on fight night, but yeah, this is obviously something that gets blown up a lot because these two are pretty prominent names both in the coaching and the fighting space. But yeah, if you go to what was actually said, like who is sitting here claiming he was wholly wrong, I saw Daniel Cormier kind of come out and be like, pick at the comments of I only want to train world champions. Of course, if you're saying it in the way DC climbed, like no coach can say I'm only going to coach world champions. That's not the way it works. But I think he's more of like a mentality aspect that Eric was talking about, and I think DC kind of took it the wrong way there too. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We've seen coach and fighter strifes all the time. These two seem like they have the personality where it's not going to turn Extreme Couture into a uncomfortable or brutal place to be. I think they'll get past it.
Yeah. That's the question, I guess. And it sounds like I already got a feeling from Mike that they will mend fences and be together. Matt, what do you think, man? Is that the best thing for them? They won a world title together. And again, going back to other sports, Billy Martin got fired 7 times from the Yankees, and they kept bringing him back because somehow they felt like there's some magic in there that maybe he can help them win a world title. Then we find out, that Phil Jackson, in The Last Dance, and Michael Jordan, they weren't always fist bumping. Eric Del Fiero told us in studio him and Dominic Cruz didn't talk for a whole year in between some of the layoffs that he had, yet you'd see them together, back together. What do you think, pal?
Dude, I love that you brought up the other sports references because that's exactly where I was going. We see this all the time, whether it be NBA, MLB, NFL. Coaches will get up there on the dais and they will publicly challenge their teams to do better. Whether it be calling out a player individually or the team as a whole, they will challenge them. They will say the effort was not there. We have to do better, X, Y, and Z, right? To varying degrees. Sometimes it's more intense. Sometimes it's more subtle. In this, like Mike said, like he didn't say anything that was out of pocket, right? Everything that Eric Nicksick said, we heard on the camera in between rounds. He just reiterated it in a podcast form, right? And Sean kind of said that, Eric's trying to be like an influencer now. Like, no, Eric Nicksick does interviews with any and everybody. Give him a call. He'll probably hop on your podcast, if you've got a platform, right? So it's not like it was something out of the ordinary either. But I like the fact that, we had a premier coach in MMA get on a microphone and say, hey, I want a better effort from my fighter. And if your fighter can't take that criticism, kind of got to look in the mirror and say like, hey, why am I being so sensitive about this?